Welcome back. I'm your trainer and PMP coach, Anand. I'm glad that I'm able to contribute to your PMP certification journey. This is continuation of first chapter, Introduction to Project Management. Next important concept is project management processes. We will start with understanding what is a process. PMBOK guide defines all processes as input, output, and tools and techniques. Think about a process to make a juice. What we do, we take a fruits as an input, we use a juice maker as a tool, and you get a juice as an output. This process is a set of activities to produce the desired output. Thus, activities in project take some input, apply some tools and techniques, and it creates an output. Think of one of the well-known processes used in project management, that is quality control. Quality control process is about checking or verifying the quality of deliverables whether they comply with stated requirement or not. So naturally, input will be deliverables, tools and techniques are inspection and testing, and output is verified deliverable. Now we can use this produced deliverable as an input to another process to generate another output. In our example, the output of quality control process, that is verified deliverable, act as an input to another process validate scope. And once you apply tools and technique of a validate scope process, you get output that is accepted deliverable. The interaction between processes varies based on the need of the project. Processes generally falls between one of these three categories. Processes used once are at a predefined point in the project, for example, develop project charter. Processes perform periodically as needed, for example, acquire resources. So whenever you need resources, you will execute this process. And finally, processes perform continuously throughout the project. For example, quality control process. So every time you have a deliverable, you will be performing quality control. It might be on a deliverable, right, like a product, yeah, some software, or it can be a quality control of a documented deliverables like a design document, yeah, architectural document. Also, another example is monitoring and controlling processes. You as a project manager will be continuously performing monitoring and controlling. So there is a lot of overlap of these processes with each other. There are 49 processes grouped in a 5 process group and 10 knowledge areas. A project management process group is a logical grouping of project management processes to achieve a specific objective. We have 5 process groups: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. These process groups are independent of a project phases. Please note that they are not same as project phases. Initiating process group contains the processes performed to define a new project or phase. Planning process group contains the processes which helps you to define the project objective, establish project scope, plan how project will be executed, and close. So it's all about planning. Executing process group contains the processes related to performing actual work. It's about action. It is about creating deliverables as a part of executing process group. I call it as a action oriented process group. Monitoring and controlling process group contains the processes that will help project manager to track and review progress, ensure project compliance as per PMO methodologies, and also perform integrated change management. And finally, closing process group, which helps you to finalize all project activities and formally close the phase of the project or the project itself. Easiest way to remember this process group is by relating them with some question. In initiating process group, your focus is on why this project is initiated. In planning process group, your focus is on what and how. What is that you want to deliver and how you will deliver it. In executing process group, it is about doing what was planned. Monitoring and controlling process group, It is about verifying work that has been done, yeah, that was planned, whether it is done as planned or not. Monitoring and controlling happens in parallel to executing. Most of time you monitor what your team is executing. Output of monitoring and controlling results into replanning. And finally, closing process group, it is about ending the phase or the project. So there is a lot of overlap between the activities performed in these process groups. Another way to group processes is to bind them by specialized nature of work they facilitate. This grouping is called as knowledge areas. For example, the processes related to project scope are grouped under project scope management knowledge area. PMBOK guide maps a process both in process group and in knowledge area. The process which help you in doing some scope planning falls under the planning process group, and since it is about working on the scope, it also falls under scope management knowledge area. Let's take a look at 10 knowledge areas. We start with project integration management, scope management, schedule management, cost management, quality management, resource management, communication, risk, procurement, and stakeholder management. Project integration management, this knowledge area tells you how to bind all processes of a project management to achieve project objective. It ensures integrated schedule and cost plans. It provides integrated monitoring and change management of the project. This knowledge area manages the complete life cycle of the project from its starting till its closure. Project scope management knowledge area helps you in managing project scope. It works on the scope related process like requirement elicitation and analysis, preparation of scope statement, and even validation of scope. Schedule management helps in identifying at what point what is happening. It also keeps eyes on what is going on as per a plan, where we need replanning. It helps you in identifying and managing project timelines. Cost management, it's all about money. We plan cost for each project activities, and some money is reserved for future uncertainties. And also cost is monitored during the execution and when needed. Cost is replanned to manage the variances, and this continues throughout the cost management activities. Project quality management, this includes the processes that are helpful to ensure the quality of a project deliverable. It also includes process improvement, quality audit, and controlling activities to achieve customer satisfaction. Resource management, this knowledge area groups all the processes required to plan needed resources, acquire them for the project, develop and improve their skills, and finally manage them for a project performance. Communication management knowledge area helps you to confirm the proper plan of information needed by a different stakeholder, distributing that information to them, and monitoring if stakeholders are informed as needed or not. Project risk management. Uncertainties or risk are the potential of losing the value of a project deliverable. Thus, processes are grouped which helps in identifying risk, prioritizing risk based on their impact and probability of occurrence, identifying risk response if risk occurs, implementing risk response, monitoring them through the project, and so on. Procurement management is all about purchasing or acquiring of products that are needed from the on the project, mostly from outside sources, yeah, outside organization. This knowledge area includes processes necessary to manage and control the contract from outside parties. And finally, stakeholder management. This knowledge area includes the processes needed in identifying project stakeholder, monitor them, engage them as per a desired level so that everyone works together to achieve the project's objective. Let's look at the chart visualizing these 49 processes. These processes are arranged horizontally as a process group and vertically as a knowledge area. You can see in the first column, we have initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing process group. At the top, in first row, we have 10 knowledge areas, which corresponds with the different chapters of PMBOK. The intersection of knowledge area and process group is where you find these 49 processes. Right now, don't worry about remembering these 49 processes. In PMBOK, fourth chapter onwards, basically you have each chapter for each knowledge area. As you go through each chapter, you will understand respective processes under the knowledge area. Interrelationship of key project component. We already learned about project lifecycle, 5 process groups and 10 knowledge area. But it is very important to understand the relationship between them. On the screen, you can see a project lifecycle with generic phases. Lifecycle is application specific. For example, you will have a different lifecycle for IT project versus construction project. We have 5 process groups and they will execute under each phase of the project. Further, we have 10 knowledge areas, which is grouping of 49 processes belongs to various process group as we learned in our last slide. Common process interaction. Processes overlap and interact in a way that are not completely detailed in PMBOK, and it is not possible to do that. Let's look at the diagram and try to understand the interaction. So you enter the phase or you start the project. Within this phase, you have initiating processes, which leads to planning processes. Further, you have executing processes starts in parallel to planning processes. Then you have monitoring and controlling processes span from beginning till end. And finally, you have closing processes. And then you exit the phase or end the project. As you can see, there is a huge overlap of these 3 process groups, especially planning, executing, and monitoring controlling. Application of processes are iterative and many processes are repeated. Right now, this looks a lot confusing, but you have to keep visualizing this interaction, and by the end of this chapter, you will be able to get a good understanding of this concept. For a small project, a process group may execute once. In this example, you have a software development project and you can see multiple phases are there, but it is very small project and most of the activities defined under each of the process group, if they carry out once, that is sufficient to complete this project. In case of a large project, large construction project, process group may execute once for each phase of the project. Again, you can see that in a feasibility, you have all the 5 process group getting executed, planning, design, and so on. In agile or hybrid project group may execute once for a certain phases and multiple time for a certain phases. So in this case, feasibility initiating, you have a process group getting executed once. However, in a release phase where you have multiple releases, you have multiple iteration, and for each iteration, you are executing all these process group once. Process groups are linked by the output which are produced. Output of one process generally becomes an input to another process or its deliverable. Deliverable may be sometimes incremental. As you can see in the diagram, all process group overlapping with each other. The level of process interaction differs project to project, but diagram depicts the standard interaction. Initiating process group takes a least amount of time. Almost from the beginning, you start with the planning process group, followed by executing process group. This needs a maximum cost and effort. Planning and executing also goes hand in hand. Monitoring and controlling process group goes across the entire time span. Closing process group starts in the middle, and once executing process group is getting over, it will picks up and it gets closed. Let's look at each process group in detail. Let's start with the initiating process group. Now this consists of those processes performed to define a new project or a new phase by obtaining authorization to start the project or phase. Project manager is selected, project charter is created and project is authorized by a respective authority. Initial scope is defined and initial financial resources are committed. Stakeholders are identified. Stakeholder expectations are understood. Overall, the purpose is to align the stakeholder expectation with the project's purpose, give stakeholder visibility about the scope and objectives, and show stakeholder how their participation in the project can ensure that their expectations are achieved. Planning process group. So this is all about planning your work. In this process group, project manager along with the project team decide what they want, how to do it, when to do, who will do what, how much of money is required, time needed, etc. This is where project management plan is developed. You establish scope, refine objective, define product to be produced, define work required, estimate the resources, efforts and finalize their schedule, estimate cost या budget. You complete the project management plan, which is progressively elaborated throughout the life cycle. The key purpose of this process group is to outline the strategy and tactics to successfully complete the project, identify risks that are not visible upfront and plan for them, and also document how to execute other processes in this project. Executing process group. This consists of those processes performed to complete the work defined in the project management plan to satisfy the project specification. This is where most of the project resources will be used and most of the work will be executed. The activities involved in this process group are directing and managing project resources, establishing and managing the project team, coordinating with people, resources, stakeholders, monitoring the team performance, performing procurement, performing quality assurance activities. The key purpose of this process group is to execute the project activities to produce the deliverable, coordinate with a stakeholder and various resources, and finally managing stakeholder expectation and meeting them. So overall, this process group is all about creating your deliverable. Monitoring and controlling process group. It consists of processes required to track, review and regulate processes and performance of the project, identify any new area in which changes to the plan are required and initiate those corresponding changes. Include status reporting, progress measurement and forecasting. Changes are initiated and reviewed and approved as a part of this process group. It also helps you to formalize the acceptance of deliverable, also called as a scope verification, and finally records the quality control results. The overall purpose of this process group is to control the project scope, schedule, cost, and project document changes, monitor the project activities against what was planned or approved inside project management plan, and control the changes so that only approved changes are implemented and nothing more. Closing process group. It consists of processes to conclude activities across all process groups and complete the project or phase or a contract. So activities include releasing people and resources, reporting on the team's performance and documenting lesson learned, updating or finalizing document, project records and results, finally storing or archiving all the project related information. The main purpose of this process group is to obtain the acceptance by the stakeholder to formally close the project or a phase, verify the contracts and deliverable that are completed, and finally conduct post-project or phase-end reviews and document those lessons learned which can be helpful in the future of a project or for other projects within the organization.